The stars looked different from this far out. Captain Marcus Chen stood at the observation window of the UNSS Prometheus, watching the massive structure of Threshold 7 grow larger as they approached. The station hung in space like a steel flower, its 12 petals representing the 12 species of the Korvax collective. Each petal glowed with different colored lights, creating a display that might have been beautiful if Chen wasn't so nervous. This was humanity's first real chance at joining the wider galactic community. Earth had only achieved faster-than-light travel 8 years ago, and in that time, they had been careful, cautious. They explored nearby systems and made contact with a few minor species, but nothing like this. The Korvax collective controlled nearly a quarter of the known galaxy. Getting their approval meant everything. Behind Chen, his small team prepared for the meeting. There was Dr. Sarah Kim, the linguist who had spent 3 years learning the primary Korvax languages. Lieutenant James Rodriguez stood near the door, trying to look relaxed but failing. He was their security officer, though Chen doubted one armed human would make any difference if things went wrong. The last member was Ambassador Victoria Cross, a woman who had negotiated peace treaties on Earth that everyone said were impossible. 10 minutes until docking, the pilot announced through the intercom. Ambassador Cross adjusted her formal jacket and walked over to stand beside Chen. "Nervous?" she asked quietly. "Terrified," Chen admitted. "We're about to sit down with species that have been traveling the stars for thousands of years. We've barely left our own solar system. That's why they agreed to meet us," Cross said. "We're new, unknown. They want to see what we are before we become a problem." Chen looked at her. "You think they see us as a potential problem?" "Everyone is a potential problem until proven otherwise," Cross replied. "It's politics. Universal, apparently." The Prometheus shuddered slightly as the docking clamps engaged. Through the window, Chen could see Korvax security ships positioned around the station. They were sleek and dangerous looking, each one probably capable of destroying the Prometheus without effort. The message was clear: behave yourselves. The airlock cycled open with a hiss. On the other side stood 3 figures that definitely were not human. The center one was tall and thin, with skin that shimmered like oil on water. Its eyes were too large and completely black. The 2 flanking it were shorter, covered in what looked like silver fur with multiple arms folded in precise positions. "Welcome to Threshold 7, the center figure said. Its mouth didn't move, but the words appeared directly in Chen's mind. He tried not to show his surprise. "I am Coordinator Jaltos. You will follow." The walk through the station took 20 minutes. Chen tried to memorize the route, noting exits and corridors, old military habits dying hard. The walls were covered in displays showing news and information from across the collective's territory. He saw ships, planets, creatures beyond imagination. Earth suddenly felt very small. They entered a large chamber shaped like an amphitheater. 12 seats were arranged in a semicircle, each occupied by a different species. Some were humanoid, others decidedly not. One looked like it was made of living crystal. Another seemed to shift and flow like water. At the center of the semicircle was a simple table with 4 chairs for the human delegation. "Please sit," Jaltos gestured. "We have much to discuss." The next hour was careful diplomatic dancing. Ambassador Cross spoke about Earth's desire for peaceful cooperation, about what humanity could offer the collective. Chen provided details about human technology and capabilities, being honest but careful. Dr. Kim translated nuances and helped avoid cultural misunderstandings. Everything seemed to be going well. The Korvax representatives asked questions, nodded at answers, and made notes. Then one of them, a being that looked like an insect the size of a human, leaned forward. "We have a question about human biology," it said, its voice clicking and buzzing. "Your medical data shows unusual brain activity. We would like to conduct a simple test, if you permit." Ambassador Cross glanced at Chen, then nodded. "What kind of test?" "A basic psionic scan," Jaltos explained. "Standard procedure for all species entering the collective. It allows us to establish proper communication protocols." Chen felt uneasy but couldn't explain why. Cross nodded again. "Very well." 3 of the Korvax stood and approached the human table. They positioned themselves around the delegation, and Chen felt something press against his mind. It was like someone was trying to open a door in his head, pushing and probing. He instinctively pushed back. The room exploded into chaos. All three Korvax stumbled backward, surprise and something else. Fear flashing across their faces. Alarms began blaring. The crystal being stood abruptly, and suddenly the chamber was filled with guards. "What is happening?" Cross demanded, standing up. Jaltos stared at the humans with those black eyes, and for the first time, Chen saw real emotion there. "You resisted. All of you." "That should be impossible." "Resisted what?" Rodriguez had his hand on his sidearm, though he hadn't drawn it. "The psionic integration," Jaltos said slowly. "Every species in the collective is psionically compatible. It is how we maintain order, prevent conflict, ensure cooperation. But you are immune, resistant. We cannot touch your minds." Chen felt cold realization wash over him. The collective didn't maintain peace through diplomacy and mutual benefit. They maintained it through mind control, and humans were immune. "This changes things," the insect being said, its voice harder now, significantly. The next few minutes were tense. The Korvax representatives conferred in their own languages, ignoring the humans. Finally, Jaltos turned back to them. "Your ship is free to leave," it announced. "Return to Earth. Tell your leaders that the collective will consider your application for membership. We will send our decision within 30 days. It was a dismissal and not a friendly one." Cross tried to salvage something to explain that humanity meant no threat, but Jaltos simply gestured to the guards. "You will leave now." They had no choice. Rodriguez kept himself between the Korvax and the others as they retreated through the corridors. Chen's mind raced, trying to understand what had just happened. They had come in peace and somehow become a threat just by being what they were. They were 20 meters from the airlock when Rodriguez suddenly stopped. "Sir, the Prometheus is powering up. They're not waiting for us." Chen pushed past him and looked through the observation window. Their ship was indeed moving, pulling away from the docking port. "What are they doing?" The answer came over his communication device. Lieutenant Sarah Park's voice crackled through, urgent and stressed. "Captain, they're forcing us to undock. The station has weapons locked on us. They said to leave immediately or be destroyed." "Sir, what do we do?" "Get out of here, Park," Chen ordered. "That's a direct order. We'll find another way back." "Sir, I can't." "Go!" Chen shouted. "Save the ship and the crew. Tell Earth what happened here." There was a long pause. "Understood, Captain. We'll come back for you, I promise." Chen watched the Prometheus accelerate away, her engines flaring bright before she jumped to FTL, leaving him and his 3 companions alone on an alien station. He turned to find guards surrounding them, weapons ready. Jaltos appeared, floating more than walking. "Captain Marcus Chen, you will remain here as our guest while we discuss matters with your government." "Guest?" Cross said sharply. "You mean hostage?" "Call it what you wish," Jaltos replied. "Your immunity to psionic control makes you dangerous. Until we determine Earth's intentions, you will stay here. Do not resist. Your companions will be held in separate quarters." They were separated immediately. Chen fought the urge to resist as guards led him away. This wasn't a situation that could be solved with violence. He was marched through more corridors down several levels until they reached what was clearly a detention area. His cell was small but not uncomfortable. There was a bed, a basic sanitation unit, and a desk with a screen. The walls were transparent on one side, looking out into a guard station where 3 Korvax watched him constantly. Chen sat on the bed and forced himself to think. Earth would receive the Prometheus and hear what happened. They would try to negotiate. The Korvax would demand something. Probably submission, some guarantee that humanity would accept their psionic control if it were possible, or agree to remain isolated from the wider galaxy. What Chen couldn't know was whether Earth would negotiate at all, whether they would trade him and the others for peace, whether one man's life was worth potential war with a galactic power. He had been a soldier before becoming a diplomat. He had seen war. He knew the calculations that governments made. One man, even a captain, wasn't worth thousands or millions of lives. The screen on the desk activated, showing Jaltos. "Captain Chen, your government has been contacted. They have 30 days to accept collective authority over Earth. If they refuse, you and your companions will be executed as examples. We have found that such measures encourage cooperation." "You're making a mistake," Chen said quietly. "Am I?" Jaltos tilted its head. "You are one man. Your species is new to space, barely capable of defending your own system. You have no allies, no fleet, no power to oppose us. Your government will accept our terms because they have no choice. Chen stood and walked to the transparent wall. He looked directly at Jaltos, and despite the fear in his gut, he smiled. You really don't know anything about humans, do you? We know you are weak, divided. Your planet is filled with nations that fight each other over resources and ideology. You are exactly like every other primitive species we have encountered. Then you've just made the biggest mistake of your civilization's history, Chen said, because there's one thing that unites humans faster than anything else. We don't abandon our own. We don't leave people behind. You think taking hostages will make Earth surrender? You've just guaranteed they'll come for us. Jaltos made a sound that might have been laughter. With what? Your handful of exploration ships? Your primitive weapons? Be realistic, Captain. You are alone. Your government will choose survival over your life. It is the logical choice. Chen turned away and sat back down on the bed. You're probably right, he admitted. It is the logical choice. But humans aren't always logical. And that's what makes us dangerous. The screen went dark. Chen was alone with his thoughts and a growing certainty that things were about to get much worse before they got better. If Earth chose to negotiate, he would likely be imprisoned or killed anyway, once the collective decided humanity was too dangerous to allow freedom. If Earth chose to fight, thousands would die, and Earth would probably lose. But there was a third option that Jaltos hadn't considered. The option that humans had chosen throughout their bloody, stubborn history. When faced with impossible odds and unacceptable choices, Earth might just decide that logic could go to hell. Chen lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling. Come on, humanity, he whispered. Show them what we're really made of. In the vast emptiness of space, the Prometheus raced toward Earth, carrying news of the hostage situation. And on Threshold 7, the Korvax collective settled in to wait for what they were certain would be Earth's surrender. They had no idea what was coming. The UNSS Prometheus dropped out of FTL at the edge of Earth's solar system, her hull scarred and her crew exhausted. Lieutenant Sarah Park sat in the captain's chair that should have held Marcus Chen, and every moment reminded her that she had left him behind. The crew was silent, processing the failure of their mission and the impossible situation they now faced. Communications. Send priority alpha signal to UN command, Park ordered. Tell them we need immediate council assembly. All members. This can't wait. The response came back within minutes. Acknowledged, Prometheus. You are cleared for direct approach to Geneva. A shuttle will meet you in orbit. Park had never been to the UN headquarters on Earth. She was a pilot, not a diplomat. But she would have to explain what happened, and she dreaded it. How do you tell the leaders of humanity that you left their people behind because you were forced to run? The shuttle ride down was quiet. Park and the 3 remaining crew members who had witnessed the events at Threshold 7 sat in formal uniforms, prepared to testify. The city of Geneva spread below them, peaceful and unaware of what was coming. The UN General Assembly Hall was packed. Every nation had sent representatives. Park stood at the podium, feeling small under the weight of thousands of eyes. Secretary General David Okonkwo, a tall man from Nigeria with gray hair and sharp eyes, nodded for her to begin. Park's voice shook at first, but grew stronger as she described the mission. The initial contact, the seemingly friendly negotiations, the psionic test that revealed humanity's immunity, the chaos that followed, the forced departure, and finally the message from Coordinator Jaltos. They gave us 30 days, Park said, her hands gripping the podium. Submit to Korvax authority and accept vassal status, or Captain Chen and the others will be executed. They believe we have no choice but to surrender. The hall erupted. Delegates shouted in dozens of languages. Some called for immediate military action. Others demanded negotiations. A few insisted that 4 lives were not worth risking war with a galactic power. Secretary General Okonkwo let them argue for 5 minutes before slamming his gavel. Order, we will have order. The hall slowly quieted. Okonkwo looked out at the assembly, then back at Park. Lieutenant, in your professional opinion, what will happen if we attempt to negotiate? Park had been expecting this question. She had thought about it for the entire journey home. Sir, they don't want to negotiate. They want submission. The Korvax collective maintains control through psionic manipulation. They can't manipulate us. That makes us a threat. If we surrender, they will either find a way to control us or eliminate us. If we try to negotiate, they will see it as weakness and increase their demands. And if we refuse? Asked the Chinese delegate. They will kill the hostages, Park said quietly. And they will likely attack Earth as an example to other species considering resistance. Silence fell over the assembly. The weight of the situation pressed down on everyone. 4 lives against potentially billions. The logical choice seemed obvious. The Russian delegate stood. We cannot risk our entire species for 4 people. I propose we open negotiations with the Korvax. See what terms we can achieve that preserve Earth's independence while satisfying their security concerns. Several delegates nodded. Others looked uncomfortable but didn't disagree. It was logical, reasonable. The kind of decision that governments had made throughout history when faced with impossible choices. The American delegate stood next. She was young, barely 40, and known for her aggressive stance on space security. Admiral Jessica Raines had served in the Navy before entering politics. I disagree, she said flatly. Admiral Raines, the Russian delegate began. No. Raines cut him off. You're all thinking like this is a normal hostage situation. It's not. This is a test. The Korvax aren't asking if we'll submit. They're asking what we're made of. They're asking if we're the kind of species that abandons our own people when things get hard. And our answer to that question will determine how the entire galaxy treats us for generations. 4 lives, someone started. 4 lives today, Raines interrupted. But if we abandon them, how many tomorrow? How many when the Korvax decide that Earth has a resource they want? How many when they decide that humanity is too dangerous to exist and our submission wasn't enough? We set a precedent here. We show the galaxy who we are. The British delegate stood. Admiral Raines makes a point, but we must be realistic. We have 30 exploration vessels, basic defensive platforms. We have been in space for less than a decade. The Korvax Collective has thousands of ships and millions of years of experience. Military action would be suicide. Maybe, said the Brazilian delegate, standing. But my grandfather fought in World War III. He told me that there are worse things than dying. Losing your humanity is one of them. If we abandon Captain Chen, if we let fear dictate our actions, we aren't the species that reached for the stars. We're just cowards who got lucky. The debate raged for 2 more hours. Park stood at the side, watching the most powerful people on Earth argue about whether her captain was worth saving. She wanted to scream at them, to tell them that Marcus Chen had saved her life twice during the Ganymede conflict, that he was a good man who deserved better than to be a bargaining chip. Finally, Secretary General Okonkwo called for a vote. All those in favor of opening negotiations with the Korvax Collective to secure the release of the hostages while preserving Earth's independence? Hands rose. Park counted 47 votes. All those in favor of refusing Korvax demands and pursuing military options to recover our people? More hands rose. Park counted as her heart hammered. 58 votes. Okonkwo paused, looking out at the assembly. The motion for military action passes. May God help us all. He turned to Admiral Raines. Admiral, you have advocated for this action. You will lead it. You have authorization to activate the Armada Protocol. Park didn't know what the Armada Protocol was, but she saw Admiral Raines straighten, her face grave. Understood, sir. I'll need full access to all resources. Every shipyard, every factory, every reserve unit. You have it, Okonkwo said. Bring them home, Admiral. Raines nodded and left the hall immediately. Park followed, catching up to her in the corridor. Ma'am, what's the Armada Protocol? Raines looked at her with something between determination and sadness. It's a contingency plan we developed after the Mars Rebellion, based on historical analysis of human behavior in crisis situations. We noticed a pattern throughout our history. Humans are terrible at preventing wars, but we're very good at fighting them once they start. The Armada Protocol assumes that someday, we would need to mobilize Earth's entire military and industrial capacity for a single purpose. Today is that day. Can we actually build a fleet strong enough to face the Korvax in 30 days? No, Raines admitted. But we're going to try anyway, because that's what humans do. We attempt the impossible and sometimes we pull it off. Within 6 hours, the transformation began. Every news network on Earth broadcast the situation. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Recruitment centers were flooded with volunteers. Retired military personnel reported for duty without being asked. Civilian companies offered their facilities and resources. Park was reassigned to the Armada project, given a command position despite her junior rank. The military was pulling anyone with space experience into leadership roles. She reported to the primary shipyard in orbit above Brazil, where she found organized chaos. The shipyard had been designed to build one exploration vessel every 6 months. Now it was being retooled to produce warships, dozens of them. The designs were rough, cobbled together from existing technology and theoretical weapons systems. They wouldn't be pretty, and they probably wouldn't match Korvac's technology, but they would be armed and they would fly. A grizzled man in a general's uniform approached her. "Lieutenant Park, I'm General Kowalski. I'm coordinating the ship production. We need experienced pilots to test these things as we build them. You up for it?" "Yes, sir," Park said without hesitation. "Good. First one rolls out tomorrow. Probably has a dozen critical flaws we haven't found yet. Try not to die." Park spent the next 2 weeks testing prototypes, pushing them to their limits, identifying problems. The engineers worked around the clock, fixing issues, improving designs. Every ship that passed testing was immediately assigned a crew and moved to the growing fleet. The ships were named after battles. The Remember Thermopylae, the Wake Island, the Rorke's Drift, the Alamo. Every name carried the same message: humans who fought against impossible odds. Some had won, some had lost. All had refused to surrender. Park finally met Admiral Rains again on day 19. The Admiral had aged visibly, stress and lack of sleep taking their toll. She stood on the bridge of the flagship, a massive vessel that dwarfed anything humanity had built before. It was called the Unbroken, and it looked like it could ram a planet. "Status report," Rains ordered as Park entered. "Ma'am, we have 783 vessels completed and crewed. Another 100 in final stages. All crews have completed basic training. We're as ready as we're going to be." Rains nodded slowly. "Not enough. Not nearly enough. The Korvacs will outnumber us at least 3-1, probably more. Their ships are better. Their crews are experienced. By every military metric, we should lose. But," Park prompted. "But we're not fighting for territory or resources," Rains said. "We're fighting to bring our people home. That matters. It changes things." She turned to look at Park directly. "I'm giving you command of a strike squadron. 12 fast attack ships. Your job is going to be getting to the station and extracting Captain Chen while the rest of the fleet keeps the Korvacs busy." Park felt her chest tighten. "Ma'am, I'm the one who left him behind." "I know," Rains said. "That's why you're the best person to bring him back. You won't fail twice." The next day, the UN made a public broadcast to the Korvacs Collective. Secretary General Okonkwo stood before the cameras, his face hard. "You have taken our people. You have threatened our world. You have given us 30 days to submit. Here is our response. No, we do not submit. We do not negotiate with those who take hostages. Return Captain Chen and his team immediately unharmed, or we will come for them. All of us." The Korvacs' response came within hours. Coordinator Jaltos appeared on every screen, its black eyes gleaming. "You are making a mistake. You cannot oppose the collective. You have no fleet, no allies, no hope. Surrender now, or your people die and your world will face consequences." The response from Earth was not diplomatic. It was not careful. It was 800 warships launching from orbit, forming up into attack formations, their engines burning bright enough to see from the surface. And leading them was Admiral Jessica Dangerous Rose Rains, a woman who had never lost a battle she considered important. This one was important. The Armada jumped to FTL, headed for Threshold 7. Behind them, Earth held its breath and prayed. Ahead of them, the Korvacs scrambled to respond to a threat they had not anticipated. And in his cell, Marcus Chen heard alarms and felt the station shudder as ships departed to intercept. He smiled despite everything. They were coming. Admiral Jessica Rains stood on the bridge of the Unbroken and watched the stars streak past in the strange colors of FTL travel. Behind her, the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled followed in tight formation. 837 vessels crewed by over 90,000 humans who had volunteered to do something that should have been impossible. "Admiral, we're receiving intelligence updates from our scout drones," Commander Park reported. She had been promoted twice in the last 3 weeks, and Rains could see the weight of responsibility sitting heavily on her young shoulders. "The Korvacs have positioned defensive fleets at 3 strategic points along our route. They know we're coming." "Of course they do," Rains said. She pulled up the tactical display, studying the enemy positions. "They think we're going to try to punch through directly. They've set up choke points, Are we not going through them? Asked Captain Wu, her tactical officer. Rains smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. It was the smile that had earned her the nickname Dangerous Rose during the Mars Rebellion. Beautiful to look at, deadly to touch. Commander Park, how many ships did we lose during the test runs through the Kepler Strait? 37, ma'am, Park replied. The gravitational shear and radiation made it extremely dangerous. Dangerous for us, Rains agreed. Suicidal for them. The Korvax have better technology, but they also have better sense. They won't follow us through there. She turned to her navigation officer. Plot a course through Kepler. We're taking the long way around. The bridge crew exchanged glances. The Kepler Strait was a region of space where 3 neutron stars created a gravitational nightmare. FTL travel through it was possible, but required constant course corrections and exposed ships to deadly radiation. It was the kind of route that military planners labeled as emergency use only and hoped they never needed. Ma'am, Wu said carefully, we'll lose ships. Maybe a lot of them. We'll lose more fighting through 3 defensive fleets, Rains replied. And we don't have time to find another route. Captain Chen and his people have been prisoners for 26 days. Every hour we delay is another hour they're in danger. She looked around at her crew. I know what I'm asking. Every captain in the fleet knows. They volunteered anyway. We all did. The orders went out. The fleet adjusted course, angling toward the Kepler Strait. Rains watched the tactical display as the Korvax defensive positions fell behind them. There was a moment where she could see the enemy ships repositioning, trying to intercept. But they were too slow. The human fleet was already committed. The first ship entered the strait. The Valkyrie, commanded by Captain Sarah Thompson, a woman who had been retired for 5 years before volunteering. Her voice came over the fleet channel, calm and professional. Kepler entry, this is Valkyrie. Gravitational shear is within expected parameters. Radiation levels high but manageable. We're through the first section. One by one, the ships followed. Rains gripped the arms of her chair as the Unbroken entered the strait. The ship shuddered and groaned, stressed by forces that tried to pull it in 3 directions at once. Alarms blared as radiation levels spiked. Hull integrity at 85%, Wu reported. Shields holding. Keep us steady, Rains ordered her helmsman. The journey through the strait took 3 hours. 3 hours of constant tension, of watching the tactical display as ships struggled through. The Achilles lost power and had to be towed by the Spartacus. The Defiant suffered a reactor breach and had to be abandoned, her crew evacuated. The Tokyo drifted too close to a radiation zone and lost all electronics, floating dead in space. When the Unbroken finally emerged on the other side, Rains immediately called for a fleet count. Status report. How many did we lose? Park's voice was quiet. 41 ships, ma'am. The Tokyo Defiant and 39 others. We're still trying to rescue survivors from some of them. 41 ships. Over 4,000 people. Rains felt the weight of those deaths settle on her shoulders. She had known losses were inevitable, but knowing didn't make it easier. Mark their positions. Recovery ships will come back for survivors once this is over. If this works, she didn't add. If we don't all die. But they had bypassed 3 defensive fleets. The route to Threshold 7 was clearer now, and the Korvax were scrambling to respond to a fleet that had appeared behind their defensive lines. The fleet continued forward. Rains used the time to walk through the ship, talking to her crew. She visited engineering, where men and women worked to repair damage from the strait. She stopped by the medical bay, where injured personnel from the strait crossing were being treated. She went to the flight deck, where pilots prepared their fighters for the battle to come. A young pilot, barely 20, stopped her. Admiral? Is it true we're outnumbered 3-1? Rains looked at her. Probably worse than that. The Korvax have been fighting in space for thousands of years. They have better ships, better weapons, better training. The pilot's face fell. Then how do we win? We don't fight to win, Rains said. We fight to get our people back. Winning is secondary. And we have something they don't understand. We have each other. Every person on this fleet volunteered. Every person here believes that no human gets left behind. That's not weakness. That's our strength. The young pilot nodded slowly. I won't let you down, ma'am. I know you won't, Rains said. 2 days later, they hit the first Korvax response fleet. It was smaller than expected, only about 200 ships, but they were positioned perfectly to intercept. Rains studied the formation and made her decision quickly. All ships, formation Delta. Fighter wings launch and harass their flanks. Capital ships maintain course and speed. We're not stopping. Ma'am, they're blocking our path, Wu said. They're trying to, Rains corrected. Launch all fighters. Target their command ships. Make them think we're going for a direct assault. Then at the last moment, all capital ships execute Emergency Scatter Pattern 3. It was a risky maneuver. Scatter Pattern 3 involved every ship taking evasive action simultaneously, breaking formation completely, then reforming on the other side of the enemy fleet. It created a brief period where the human fleet would be vulnerable, disorganized, but it also created chaos that would confuse enemy targeting systems. The battle began. Human fighters swarmed forward fast and aggressive. The Korvax responded predictably, focusing their fire on the fighters. Their larger ships moved to create a solid wall, preparing to meet the human capital ships head-on. Execute scatter pattern, Rains ordered. Now. The human fleet exploded into motion. Ships dove, climbed, rolled in every direction. The Korvax targeting computers tried to track them and failed. By the time they adjusted, the human ships were past them, reforming on the other side. Fleet status, Rains demanded. We lost 16 fighters and 2 frigates, Park reported. The Korvax are pursuing, but we're faster. They can't catch us. Rains allowed herself a small smile. Let them chase. It'll tire them out. The running battle continued for 6 hours. The Korvax pursuit fleet kept trying to box in the humans, but Rains kept finding ways to slip past them. She split her forces, then recombined them. She sent small squadrons on suicide runs that drew away enemy ships, then had those squadrons retreat at maximum speed. She used every dirty trick she had learned in 4 decades of military service. They fight strangely. She overheard a Korvax communication that her intelligence officer had intercepted. They do not follow standard tactical doctrine. They risk everything for small advantages. That's because we don't have a standard tactical doctrine for fleet combat, Rains muttered. We're making this up as we go. The Korvax seemed to be learning, though. Their next interception attempt was smarter. They waited until the human fleet entered a region of space with limited maneuvering room, then hit them from 3 sides simultaneously. Ma'am, we're boxed in, Wu reported. 600 enemy vessels. They've cut off all our escape routes. Rains studied the tactical display. Her fleet had been whittled down to just under 800 ships. The Korvax outnumbered her badly now. A straight fight would be catastrophic, but maybe she didn't need to fight. All ships, full stop, she ordered. Ma'am? Wu looked confused. Stop the fleet. Let them surround us completely. Make them think we're surrendering. Park understood immediately. You're going to use the Hornet's Nest. The Hornet's Nest was barely a tactic. It was more like organized chaos. Instead of maintaining fleet cohesion, it involved breaking up into hundreds of small groups that would attack independently, forcing the enemy to split their forces to respond. It was risky because it left ships vulnerable, but against a larger force it could create enough confusion to escape. The human fleet stopped. The Korvax ships moved in, clearly expecting surrender. They tightened their formation, closing the trap. Execute Hornet's Nest, Rains said. All ships break and attack independently. Reform at Rally Point Sigma in 6 hours. If you're not there, we're not waiting. The fleet exploded into action again. Every ship picked its own target and attacked. The Korvax formation, designed to contain a unified fleet, suddenly faced threats from dozens of directions. Their ships had to split up to respond, and once they split up, they were vulnerable. The Demeter, a light cruiser, rammed a Korvax destroyer that was trying to cut off a squadron of human fighters. Both ships died, but the fighters escaped. The Soul, down to 20% power, transmitted false signals that drew 15 enemy ships away from the main battle. They chased the Soul for an hour before realizing it was a diversion. The Spartan lost all weapons but continued to fly between enemy ships, blocking their line of fire to other human vessels. The crew knew they would die. They did it anyway. Rains watched from the Unbroken as her fleet sacrificed itself piece by piece to keep moving forward. Every loss hurt. Every brave, stupid, heroic action added to the weight on her soul. But they were working. The Korvax fleet was disorganized now, spread out, confused. All ships that can proceed to Rally Point Sigma, she broadcast. We've bloodied them. Now we finish this. Over the next hour, human ships began appearing at the rally point. Some were damaged, limping along on emergency power. Others had clearly been through hell, but were still fighting ready. Rains counted them as they arrived. 473 ships. She had lost over 300 vessels since leaving Earth. The Korvax had lost even more, but they had more to lose. Intelligence suggested they still had at least 800 ships between her and Threshold 7. Park approached her privately. "Ma'am, the crew is exhausted. The ships are damaged. We're outnumbered 2-1 now. Maybe we should consider—" "No," Rains cut her off. "We're not stopping. We're not turning back. Those people have been prisoners for almost a month. We're getting them out. Even if it costs us everything." Rains looked at her. "Commander, do you know why they call me Dangerous Rose? During the Mars Rebellion, I was assigned to evacuate a colony that was under attack. Standard procedure was to take the critical personnel and leave, but there were 300 civilians still trapped. My orders were clear: leave them. Saving them would cost too many lives. What did you do?" "I disobeyed orders. I took my entire fleet into a kill zone to extract those civilians. I lost half my ships. 2,000 people died to save 300. By every military metric, it was a disaster. I was court-martialed." Rains smiled slightly. "Then they gave me a medal and a promotion. Because sometimes the right thing to do is also the stupidest thing to do, and humans have never been very good at choosing logic over loyalty." Park was quiet for a moment. "What if we fail?" "Then we fail," Rains said. "But we fail trying. That's the message we're sending to the galaxy. You take one of ours, we come for them, all of us, no matter the cost." The fleet rested for 6 hours, making repairs, redistributing ammunition and supplies from damaged ships to those still combat-ready. Then they continued toward Threshold 7. Ahead of them, the Korvax prepared their final defense. Behind them, Earth waited and hoped. And on Threshold 7, Marcus Chen heard explosions in the distance and knew that the impossible was happening. Humanity was coming. Marcus Chen had been counting days by the meals they delivered. 29 by his estimate, 29 days in a cell on an alien station, watching through transparent walls as Korvax guards monitored his every movement. He had tried talking to them at first, asking questions, trying to understand the species that had taken him hostage. They never responded. But today was different. Today the guards were agitated. They kept looking at displays that Chen couldn't see, speaking rapidly in their own language. And in the distance he could hear something that sounded like alarms. The screen in his cell activated. Coordinator Jaltos appeared, and for the first time Chen saw genuine emotion on that alien face. It looked like disbelief. "Your people are coming," Jaltos said. "They are actually coming. We have lost over 400 ships trying to stop them, and they continue forward. This is madness." Chen sat up on his bed, trying to keep his face neutral even as hope surged through his chest. "I told you. We don't leave our own behind." "You will lose," Jaltos said. "We have 800 ships defending this station. Orbital defense platforms, automated weapon systems. Your fleet has been reduced to less than 500 vessels. They are damaged, their crews exhausted. There is no logical path to victory." "Maybe not," Chen agreed. "But we're going to try anyway. That's what humans do." "You are fools," Jaltos said. "Thousands will die for 4 people. It makes no sense." Chen stood and walked to the transparent wall. "You're right. It doesn't make logical sense. But humans aren't just logic. We're emotion, stubbornness, and loyalty. We're a species that climbed out of caves and decided to reach for the stars, even though it should have been impossible. We're a species that fights wars we should lose and somehow wins them. You took hostages thinking it would make us weak. You made us dangerous instead." The screen went dark. Chen allowed himself a small smile. Then he started to examine his cell more carefully. If the fleet was coming, he needed to be ready to move. Being rescued was good. Being able to help in his own rescue was better. The cell was designed for beings with psionic abilities. Physical strength wasn't considered because most species in the collective could be controlled mentally if they became violent. But humans couldn't be controlled. Chen had spent weeks pretending to be defeated, but he had actually been studying every detail of his prison. The transparent wall was strong, but it had seams where panels connected. The door mechanism was electronic, probably tied to the station's central computer. The ventilation grate in the ceiling was small but might be accessible. Chen had been a soldier before becoming a diplomat. He knew how to improvise, but he would need a distraction, something that would draw the guards away or disable their ability to respond. He would have to wait for the right moment. That moment came sooner than expected. The station shuddered violently, throwing Chen against the wall. Alarms blared throughout the detention area. The lights flickered and for 3 seconds went completely dark. In that darkness, Chen heard the guards shouting in confusion. When the lights came back on, 2 of the 3 guards were gone, presumably responding to whatever emergency had just occurred. The remaining guard was focused on its display, trying to understand what was happening. Chen made his decision. He grabbed the small desk in his cell, the only piece of furniture beside the bed, and slammed it against the transparent wall where 2 panels connected. The desk shattered, but so did the seal between the panels. Alarms immediately screamed in his cell. The guard spun around, reaching for its weapon. But Chen was already moving. He grabbed a piece of the broken desk, sharp and jagged, and threw it at the guard. His aim was good. The improvised weapon caught the guard in its torso and it stumbled back. Chen hit the damaged wall panel with his shoulder. It cracked further. He hit it again. On the 3rd impact, it gave way, and he tumbled through into the guard station. The wounded guard was trying to raise an alarm. Chen couldn't let that happen. The fight was brief and brutal. Chen had no weapons, and the guard had psionic abilities that didn't work on him, but it also had physical strength and natural armor. They crashed into equipment, trading blows. Chen felt ribs crack when the guard hit him, but he kept fighting. Finally, he managed to get behind it and found something vital in its nervous system. The guard collapsed. Chen grabbed the guard's weapon, a device that looked like it shot energy bolts, and tried to figure out how it worked. After a moment of examination, he decided he didn't have time to learn alien technology. He kept it anyway. Even a weapon he didn't know how to use might be useful for intimidation. The corridor outside the detention area was chaos. Korvax personnel ran in various directions, responding to multiple emergencies. Another explosion rocked the station, and Chen had to grab a wall to stay upright. Whatever the human fleet was doing, it was working. He needed to find the others. Ambassador Cross, Lieutenant Rodriguez, and Dr. Kim were being held somewhere on this station. Chen had no idea where, but he had to try. He also needed to find a way to contact the fleet, let them know he was free and could help. A group of Korvax security personnel rounded a corner, spotted him, and immediately opened fire. Chen dove behind a bulkhead as energy bolts scorched the wall where he had been standing. He was trapped, unarmed, and outnumbered. Then the station shook again, harder this time. The lights went out completely. Chen used the darkness to run, feeling his way along the wall, moving away from where the guards had been. He heard them pursuing, but they were as blind as he was. Emergency lights flickered on, dim and red. Chen found himself in a corridor lined with more cells. He looked through the transparent walls and saw beings of various species, all prisoners. In the 3rd cell, he found what he was looking for. Lieutenant Rodriguez sat on his bed but jumped up when he saw Chen. "Captain."
"What's happening?"
"Earth sent a fleet," Chen said. "We're getting out of here. Can you break your wall?" Rodriguez smiled.
"I've been working on that for 3 weeks, sir."
"Stand back." The lieutenant had apparently been more industrious than Chen. He had loosened one entire panel over weeks of careful work, hiding his progress. He pushed it out in one motion and climbed through. They found Ambassador Cross and Dr. Kim in nearby cells. Cross had a black eye and Kim's arm was in a crude bandage, but they were alive. Working together, they broke them out. "What now?" Cross asked as another explosion shook the station. "We need to get to a communication system," Chen said. "Let the fleet know we're free. Then we find a way off this station before it tears itself apart." They moved through the corridors carefully, avoiding Korvax personnel when possible. The station was falling into chaos. The human fleet's attack had clearly overwhelmed the defenders. Systems were failing. Fires burned in some sections. Chen's military training kicked in, helping him navigate using emergency markers and standard station design. They found a communication station abandoned, its Korvax operators having fled to respond to some other emergency. Dr. Kim, who had studied alien technology, worked on trying to access the system. "I think I can send a broad-spectrum signal," she said, her fingers moving over alien controls. "But I don't know if our fleet will be able to receive it." "Try anyway," Chen ordered. Kim worked for 5 minutes while the others guarded the door. Finally, she activated the system. "This is Dr. Sarah Kim, human delegation, transmitting to any human vessels. We have escaped custody and are mobile within Threshold 7. Request extraction coordinates." They waited. For 30 seconds there was nothing. Then a voice crackled through, speaking English with a familiar accent. "Dr. Kim, this is Commander Sarah Park aboard the Valkyrie. Confirm your identity." Chen grabbed the communication device. Park, this is Captain Chen. Good to hear your voice. What's your status?
Captain,
Park's relief was audible even through the static. Sir, we have 12 ships designated for extraction. We're fighting our way to your location now. Can you reach Docking Bay 7? Western spoke of the station, level 3. Chen looked at the station map on the display. That's halfway across the station, through areas that are probably heavily defended. It's the closest bay we can reach, Park said. Sir, the main fleet is buying us time, but we need to move fast. Can you make it? Chen looked at his team. Cross and Rodriguez nodded immediately. Kim hesitated, then nodded as well. They were injured, exhausted, and unarmed except for Chen's stolen weapon. But they were also human, and humans apparently crossed impossible distances to rescue each other. We'll be there, Chen said. Give us 20 minutes. You have 15, Park replied. After that, the Korvax are going to realize what we're doing and cut us off. Valkyrie out. Chen turned to the others. You heard her. We need to move fast. Cross, you're injured. Can you run? I can keep up, Cross said firmly. They left the communication station and headed for Docking Bay 7. The route took them through maintenance corridors and service tunnels that were less defended than main corridors. Chen led the way, using his soldier's instincts to avoid danger when possible. They encountered Korvax security twice. The first group was dealt with by Chen and Rodriguez, using surprise and desperation more than skill. The second group was larger and better prepared. They would have been caught if another explosion hadn't shaken the station, causing part of the ceiling to collapse between them and their pursuers. Whatever the fleet is doing to the station, it's tearing it apart, Rodriguez observed. Good, Chen said. Keep moving. They reached level 3 with 8 minutes to spare. Docking Bay 7 was visible ahead, but between them and safety stood a security checkpoint with at least 20 Korvax guards. Chen stopped his team and assessed the situation. They couldn't fight through that many guards. They couldn't sneak past. They needed another option. Kim, can you trigger a fire alarm or something? He asked. Create a distraction. Kim looked at a nearby control panel. Maybe. Give me a minute. She worked quickly while the others watched the guards. Chen counted seconds, knowing they were running out of time. Finally, Kim stepped back. Done. I've triggered emergency evacuation protocols for this entire section. It should route through in 3, 2, 1. Alarms blared. Automated systems announced evacuation procedures in multiple languages. The Korvax guards immediately began following their protocols, moving to evacuation positions. The checkpoint became disorganized. Now, Chen ordered. They ran. The confused guards saw them but were torn between following evacuation procedures and stopping the humans. That moment of hesitation was enough. Chen's team made it through the checkpoint and into the docking bay. The bay was a war zone. Human ships were exchanging fire with station defenses. Through the chaos, Chen saw the Valkyrie, her hull scarred but her engines burning bright. She was holding position near an airlock, taking fire to keep the extraction point open. Chen to Valkyrie, we're here, he shouted into the communication device. Confirmed, Captain, Park responded. Airlock 3, move. They ran across the docking bay as energy bolts and debris flew around them. The airlock was only 50 meters away, but it felt like kilometers. Kim stumbled and Rodriguez caught her. Cross was limping badly but refused to slow down. 20 meters, 10. Chen could see human Marines in the airlock providing covering fire. They were going to make it. A Korvax security team appeared from a side entrance, weapons raised. They had one clear shot at the running humans. Chen turned, ready to throw himself between his team and the weapons. Then the Valkyrie rotated and fired her point defense weapons into the docking bay. The Korvax security team disappeared in an explosion. Debris rained down and Chen felt something cut his leg, but he kept moving. They reached the airlock. Human hands pulled them through. The door sealed behind them with a solid thunk. All personnel secure, someone shouted. Valkyrie, punch it. The ship's engines roared and Chen felt acceleration press him into the deck. Through a viewport, he watched Threshold 7 fall away, still burning, still fighting. Commander Park appeared, helping Chen to his feet. Welcome aboard, sir. Let's go home. Chen nodded, too exhausted to speak. Around him, the extraction squadron formed up and accelerated toward the main fleet. Behind them, the battle for Threshold 7 continued. Ahead of them was Earth and safety and home. But first they had to survive the next few hours. The Unbroken shuddered as another Korvax missile struck her shields. Admiral Jessica Raines gripped her command chair and watched the tactical display as 800 enemy vessels swarmed her fleet. This was it. The final battle. Everything they had fought for, everyone they had lost, it all came down to the next few hours. Commander Park reports successful extraction, her communications officer announced. The Valkyrie and her squadron are clear of the station with all 4 hostages recovered. A cheer went up on the bridge. Raines allowed herself 3 seconds to feel relief. They had done the impossible. Captain Chen and his team were safe. But the celebration was premature. They still had to get out alive. All ships, this is Admiral Raines, she broadcast to the fleet. We have our people. Now we show these bastards what happens when they threaten humans. All vessels execute Omega Protocol. Omega Protocol was the last desperate plan she had developed. It wasn't elegant. It definitely wasn't safe. But if it worked, it would let most of the fleet escape while delivering a message the Korvax would never forget. The fleet split into 3 groups. The largest group, containing the extraction squadron and all damaged vessels, began accelerating away from Threshold 7 at maximum speed. The second group, about 100 ships, positioned themselves as a rear guard, ready to delay any pursuit. The third group, consisting of 50 of the most heavily armed vessels, turned directly toward the station itself. Raines was leading that third group personally. "Ma'am," Captain Wu said carefully, "Omega Protocol calls for the Admiral to command from the escape group, not the assault group." "I know what it calls for," Raines said, "but I'm changing the plan. I'll lead the assault personally." "You have command of the main fleet, Commander Park." Park's voice came through from the Valkyrie. "Ma'am, that wasn't the agreement. You were supposed to—" "I'm supposed to make sure everyone gets home," Raines interrupted. "Someone has to lead this assault, and it should be the person responsible for all of this." "That's me." "You have your orders, Commander. Get our people home." She cut the connection before Park could argue further. Wu started to protest, but Raines silenced him with a look. "Captain, we have work to do. All assault group vessels form up on the Unbroken. We're going to knock on their door." The 50 ships accelerated toward Threshold 7. The station was massive, bristling with weapons and protected by hundreds of Korvax warships. The tactical computer calculated their chances of survival at less than 3%. Raines ignored it. She hadn't expected to survive this mission anyway. The Korvax fleet moved to intercept, as she knew they would. They couldn't allow an assault on the station itself. That pulled them away from the escaping fleet, which was exactly what Raines wanted. "All ships weapons free. Target their command vessels first. Make them think we're trying to break their formation." The battle began in earnest. Space lit up with weapons fire as human ships clashed with Korvax defenders. The Unbroken's main guns fired continuously, each shot carefully aimed at enemy command ships. Around her, the assault group fought with desperate intensity. The Berlin took 3 direct hits and lost her main reactor. She used her remaining power to ram a Korvax cruiser, taking it down with her. The Moscow lost her engines but continued to fire, becoming a stationary fortress that absorbed enemy fire. The New Delhi launched all her remaining missiles at once, creating a wall of explosions that disrupted Korvax formations. Raines watched her assault group die, ship by ship, and each loss carved another piece out of her soul. But they were buying time. Behind them, the main fleet was pulling away, getting closer to the point where they could safely jump to FTL. "Admiral, we've lost contact with 30 ships," Wu reported. "The assault group is down to 20 vessels." "We can't maintain this. We don't need to maintain it," Raines said. "We just need 5 more minutes. Route all power to engines. We're going to ram the station." "Ma'am, you heard me. Calculate a ramming course for Threshold 7. All remaining assault ships follow the Unbroken. We're going to give them something to remember us by." The surviving ships of the assault group formed up behind the flagship. They accelerated directly toward the station, ignoring the Korvax vessels that tried to intercept them. The Unbroken took hit after hit, her shields failing, her armor burning away, but she kept going. Coordinator Jaltos appeared on the communication screen, its black eyes wide. "You are insane. You will kill yourselves." "Probably," Raines agreed. "But we'll hurt you first, and every other species in the galaxy is going to hear about this. They'll learn what happens when you threaten humanity. We don't negotiate. We don't surrender. We come for our own, and we make you regret ever touching them." She cut the connection and focused on the station growing larger in the viewport. The Unbroken was dying around her. Fires burned on multiple decks. Life support was failing. Half her crew was already dead. But the ship kept flying, kept accelerating, kept pointing at the heart of Threshold 7. All hands, this is Admiral Rains. It has been an honor serving with you. Tell Earth we did our job. Tell them we brought our people home. And tell them that humanity doesn't back down. Ever. She was 3 kilometers from the station when something unexpected happened. The Korvax fleet stopped firing. Ships began pulling back, breaking off their attack on the remaining human vessels. Ma'am, we're receiving a transmission from the Korvax, her communications officer said, sounding confused. They're requesting immediate ceasefire. They're offering to let the fleet withdraw. Rains didn't reduce speed. What's the catch? No catch, ma'am. They're withdrawing their forces. They're retreating. Rains looked at the tactical display. It was true. The Korvax ships were pulling back, opening a corridor for the human fleet to escape. She had seen enough battles to recognize genuine retreat when she saw it. But why, then, she understood. The assault group was down to 12 ships, all damaged beyond repair. But they were still coming. The Unbroken was going to hit the station in 90 seconds, and there was nothing the Korvax could do to stop it. They had killed or disabled every ship sent to intercept them. The survivors were going to ram home regardless of casualties. The Korvax had finally understood what they were facing. Not soldiers following orders. Not rational beings making calculated decisions. They were facing humans who had already decided they were willing to die if it meant completing their mission. You couldn't intimidate people like that. You couldn't negotiate with them. You could only get out of their way and hope they were merciful enough to take the victory and leave. Rains reduce speed. All assault group vessels reduce speed and match my course. Hold fire unless fired upon. She opened a channel to Threshold 7. This is Admiral Rains. We have recovered our people. We are withdrawing. Do not follow us. Do not threaten us again. If you do, we will come back, and next time we won't be here for a rescue. We'll be here for revenge. The Unbroken turned away from the station, her surviving escort following. They headed toward the main fleet, which had stopped to wait for them. Behind them, Threshold 7 burned and the Korvax fleet watched in silence. The journey back to Earth took 12 days. They had lost over 600 ships. More than 50,000 people had died. The survivors were exhausted, traumatized, and many were badly injured. But they had succeeded. Captain Chen spent the journey helping where he could. He visited the wounded in medical bays. He talked with crews who had lost friends. He helped engineers make repairs. And he tried to understand what humanity had done. We started a war for 4 people, he said to Admiral Rains one evening as they shared a quiet moment on the Unbroken's damaged bridge. 50,000 dead to save 4 lives. How do we justify that? Rains was quiet for a long moment. We don't, she finally said. We don't try to justify it with logic or numbers. We did it because it was right. Because you don't measure the value of a life by comparing it to other lives. You measure it by what you're willing to do to protect it. The galaxy is going to think we're crazy, Chen said. Good, Rains replied. Let them think that. Let them know that humans are the species that will cross the galaxy, fight a war they can't win, and sacrifice everything just to bring 4 people home. That's not weakness. That's our strength. The fleet emerged from FTL at the edge of Earth's solar system to find every news outlet in the system broadcasting updates. As they approached Earth orbit, they could see ships gathering. Not military vessels. Civilian ships. Thousands of them. From every nation flying every flag, all coming to escort the fleet home. The ships that limped into orbit around Earth were scarred and broken, but they were home. Park brought the Valkyrie down to the UN landing pad in Geneva, where Secretary General Okonkwo waited with an honor guard. Captain Chen stepped off the ship first, still wearing his torn and bloodied diplomatic uniform. The crowd that had gathered erupted in cheers. He stood there, overwhelmed, trying to understand that all of this had been for him and 3 others. Okonkwo stepped forward and saluted. Welcome home, Captain. On behalf of all humanity, thank you for your service, and thank you for showing us what we're capable of when we stand together. Admiral Rains disembarked from her command shuttle an hour later. She looked like she had aged 10 years and a month. When she saw the crowds, the celebrations, she stopped. They shouldn't be celebrating, she said quietly to Park, who had stayed by her side. We lost so many people. They're celebrating because we won, Park replied. Not because we beat the Korvax, because we proved that humanity doesn't abandon its own. You gave us something to believe in, Admiral. The UN General Assembly convened the next day. Chen gave his report about the Korvax Collective, their psionic control, their method of maintaining order. Rains delivered her after-action report, listing every ship lost, every life sacrificed. When she finished, the assembly sat in silence. Then the Secretary General stood. The Korvax Collective has transmitted a formal communication. They wish to open negotiations for a peace treaty and mutual non-aggression pact. They have also made it clear that they will not interfere with human expansion into space. It seems our message was received. Over the following weeks, other alien species began making contact with Earth. Some offered alliances. Others offered trade agreements. None offered threats. Word had spread across the galaxy about the species that raised an armada to rescue 4 hostages, about the fleet that fought through impossible odds and refused to surrender even when facing certain defeat. Humanity didn't become conquerors. They didn't build an empire, but they became something else. They became the species that other species respected, the ones you didn't threaten, because you knew the response would be overwhelming and immediate. 3 months after the battle, Captain Marcus Chen stood at a memorial service for the fallen. The names were inscribed on a massive wall in orbit around Earth, visible from the surface. 53,417 names, each one representing a person who had volunteered to do the impossible. They came for me, Chen said during his speech. For 4 people they didn't know, most of them. They crossed the galaxy. They fought battles they shouldn't have won. Many of them died. And they did it because that's what humans do. We don't leave our people behind, not one. Not ever. He looked up at the memorial wall, at all those names gleaming in the sunlight. I owe them a debt I can never repay, we all do. The best we can do is make sure their sacrifice meant something. Make sure the galaxy knows what they died to prove. That humans will do anything, sacrifice everything to protect our own. Admiral Rains retired after the ceremony. She spent her remaining years writing detailed accounts of the battle, making sure every act of heroism was recorded, every sacrifice remembered. She died peacefully in her sleep at age 78 and was buried with full military honors. Her tombstone bore a simple inscription. She brought them home. Commander Sarah Park took command of Earth's expanding fleet. Under her leadership, humanity explored hundreds of new systems, made contact with dozens of species, and became a major power in their region of the galaxy. But she never forgot the lessons of the Threshold 7 campaign. The fleet remained strong, ready, and carried forward the same principle. No human gets left behind. The Armada was mothballed, but not dismantled. The ships hung in orbit around Earth, a reminder and a warning. They were maintained, kept ready just in case, and every ship bore a small plaque with the same words. They held one hostage. Earth raised an Armada. We will do it again. The Korvax Collective honored their peace treaty. They never threatened Earth again. Neither did any other species that learned the story, because the galaxy had learned an important lesson about humanity. Humans might be emotional. They might be irrational. They might make decisions that defied logic and ignored good sense. But they were also loyal to a fault, brave beyond reason, and absolutely refused to abandon their own. You could negotiate with humans. You could trade with them. You could even fight them if you were foolish enough. But you could never ever take them hostage and expect them to back down, because humans didn't calculate cost-benefit ratios when their people were in danger. They didn't debate whether rescue was worth the risk. They just came. All of them. With everything they had, and heaven help anyone who stood in their way. Captain Chen lived another 40 years. He never returned to space, choosing instead to teach at the UN Diplomatic Academy. He told his students about the Korvax, about the battle, about the thousands who died to bring him home. And he always ended his lectures the same way. They came for me because I was human, not because I was important, not because I was special, just because I was one of theirs. That's not weakness. That's not foolishness. That's humanity. And if you remember nothing else from my classes, remember this. We don't leave our people behind. Not one, not ever, the galaxy learned. And humanity, the newcomers, the young species that had barely left their own solar system, became known across the stars not as conquerors or diplomats or merchants. They became known as the species you didn't threaten, The species that would cross the galaxy to save a single life. The species that turned loyalty into a weapon and stubbornness into a shield. They held one hostage. Earth raised an armada, and the galaxy would never forget.